Here's an essay that I wrote not long ago titled Nature, Nurture, Learning, and the Philosophical Formation of the Self. Our genetic heritage is a combination of long-term genetic information that is common to all the members of our species, plus short-term genetic information, the instructions we get from our parents. The shape, the structure, and the neurochemical and electrical functions of our brain constitute long-term traits that our species developed over millions of years of biological evolution. Short-term genetic traits from our parents and their parents give us our individuality. Both long and short-term genetic traits become hardwired in the brain as it develops before birth, during our first 2 years of life. By hardwired is meant the fixed inherited patterns of neuronal connections that contribute greatly to the formation of our personalities, determine our facial expressions, motor skills, our intellect, emotionality, anxiety levels, chemical balance, our mannerisms, sexuality, creativity, artistic talent, and our moral tendencies, our moral propensities. In addition to our genetic inheritance, what has shaped and molded our brain is what we learn from the environment. That is nurturing. Many studies have shown that we are significantly shaped by experiences throughout our lives as our brain's synaptic connections and neural networks come into existence and go out of existence as a result of learning and normal development. Our brains evolve not by way of nature versus nurture, but rather by a powerful interaction between nature and nurture. Many researchers state that our inherited genetic synaptic connections account for about 50% of our personality traits. We inherit our parents' and grandparents' genetic information as a foundation for who we will become. In order for the brain to learn new things by developing new neuronal connections, it needs these existing learned memories of past generations in order to make new synaptic connections, make basically new neuronal connections in the brain. We come preloaded with long-term and short-term circuits that define who we are. Since nature and nurture are in constant exchange, what we experience from the environment in terms of learning adds to nurturing the self as a work in progress. Every time we learn something new, we forge additional neural connections of our own. We add a new pattern to the three-dimensional mosaic of our neural fabric, and the self is, in that fashion, changed. If we want to design a new, progressive self, and to continue inventing and reinventing ourselves, then it is up to us consciously to add our own synaptic connections to our preloaded ones through the complex interplay of experience and learning from our environments. Learning allows us to change. Evolution allows us to transmute our genes. Learning takes place when nature is nurtured, and evolution happens when what is nurtured gives back to nature. This is the cycle of life. We have all probably caught ourselves at one time or another saying something and then realizing I am starting to sound just like my mother or just like my father. So, what are the chances that ultimately you will behave and act just like your parents? This really is a pretty good question. If conscious awareness activates only our genetically predetermined neural networks of synaptic connections, we probably will eventually think similar thoughts, feel similar feelings, and act much like our parents at different points in our lives. The inherited synaptic circuits will become so hardwired by repetition that we will be predisposed naturally by our genetic propensities to be of the same mind as our parents. Whether we have inherited the wiring for anger or for pity or for shame or for violence, for victimization or for insecurity, from the genetic code of our lineage, if these cells continue to fire together in us, they will develop stronger and more intricately refined synaptic connections that will become very difficult to sever. Persons often operate as if they had no options for behavior. We have all heard someone say, hey, that's just me, that's just who I am, that's what I believe, and that's that. And I can't change. However, this person would be more correct if she said, hey, this is just me choosing to activate the circuits I have inherited from my parents. Because my brain possesses neuroplastic qualities, I've developed some of my own neural nets. But for now, I'm choosing to go with what has been present from the beginning. That's just who I am. If we do not make any new synaptic connections through our lives, we rely only on our inherited synaptic connections and thereby cognitively and behaviorally express only our genetic predispositions. Put another way, if we repeat the same familiar behaviors, our brain will remain as status quo, or at status quo. We will not, cannot, learn anything new. Consequently, the formation of a new, unique self is placed seriously in jeopardy. In order to escape our genetic propensities, we continually must learn new information and have new experiences. I'll be back in the next clip.